Hi there, we are looking at lesson 2.9 on page 143, folks. Okay, so I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to show you how to write an equation in slope-intercept form, and then how to graph a line for an equation that is already written in slope-intercept form. So let's take a look at this first one. What is an equation for the line shown? Okay, so anytime they're asking you to write a line in an equation, that is always talking about slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, so remember, folks, the b is your initial value, your y-intercept, where the line crosses the y-axis, and your m is your rate of change, or what's called your slope. Rate of change, or your slope. So let's find the initial value. Let's find where the where the line crosses the y-axis, and we're going to put that at the end of our equation. So we're always going to start off with y equals something x plus or minus something. Okay, so if you look right here, here's your y-axis. So this line is crossing or touching the y-axis at positive 2. So my y-intercept is positive 2. That goes in place of b. My initial value is 2. Okay, so now I'm going to find the slope, or the rate of change. So on this line, I have to use either rise over run or y minus y over x minus x. This does not go through 0, 0, so it's not proportional. I cannot pick one point on the line and divide. Okay, so let's go here. Let's rise and run from here to here. So every line is counting by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I rise, I go up 1. My rise is 1. And then I run 1, 2. And my rise is 1, my run is 2, and my line is going down from left to right. So my slope is a negative a half. I went up 1, rise 1, and over 2. 1 over 2, negative. So then that absolutely goes in place of m. So y equals negative a half x plus 2 would be my final answer in slope-intercept form, my final equation. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to graph a line that is already written in slope-intercept form. Okay, so folks, the way you graph a line in slope-intercept form is you always graph the y-intercept first. So I'm going to write first in big capital letters. Graph the y-intercept on the y-axis. Okay, so our y-intercept is negative 5. So I need to come over here to negative 5, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. And I plot a point on the y-intercept right on the y-axis. Okay, next, from that point that I just graphed, from this point, rise and run the slope. Okay, so folks, here is your slope. Right here, 1/3. So because it's a fraction already, 1 is my rise and 3 is my run. So from this point, I'm going to rise 1 and run 3. And it's positive, so I'm going to rise 1, go up 1, and 3 to the right. So from this point that I graph from my y-intercept, I'm going to rise, and everything's counting by ones. I'm going to rise 1 and run 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. Plot my point. I'm going to rise 1 and run 1, 2, 3. Plot my point. Okay, so this is my line, and then I just draw a nice straight line connecting all the dots. Okay, so my next point would be here. Again, rise 1, run 1, 2, 3. I'm back on the line. Rise 1, run 1, 2, 3. But you have to graph your initial value first. Initial, where does the line start? Well, it starts at negative 5, and then you rise and run your slope. Okay, so let's practice that. So let's turn to page 144 and practice a few more of those. Okay, so if you're looking at number 4 under the do you know how section, Chrissy says the equation of the line shown on the graph is this. George says that the equation should be this. Which student is correct? Explain. Okay, well, one of the first things I look for is the y-intercept. So where the initial value. So that is absolutely right there, and this is positive 5. So the y-intercept, the initial value has to be positive 5. So automatically, George is correct. She has negative 5. She's saying the line crosses down here at negative 5, and that's not true. So George is correct. George is right because the initial value is +5, not -5. Okay, so let's take a look at another one. So we have a two-part here. It says Farah wants to rent a tent for an outdoor celebration. The cost of the tent is $500 per hour plus an additional $100 to set up. That's the setup fee. Okay, so first it's saying draw the line, graph it, and then what's the equation? So I'm going to actually do this backwards. I'm going to write the equation. Then I'm going to graph the line. So let's write the equation. Okay, so again, we're talking about slope-intercept form, y = mx plus b. Okay, folks, if you remember me talking about this, the slope is the number that happens over and over and over, like rise and run, rise and run. So if you're looking at your two numbers, your cost, the number that would happen over and over is this $500 per hour. $500 per hour, because let's say you have your party for 4 hours. Well, you're paying $500 every hour. So that is your slope. So that is the number that has to go next to your x. Okay, so when we write our equation, it's going to be y = 500x. And then remember, your b, your y-intercept, is your initial value, meaning where do you begin? Well, look, you have to pay an additional $100 to set up. So you have to pay that up front, plus $100. So that setup fee is your one-time fee. You have to pay that up front. Then you pay $500 an hour. So now this is your equation in slope-intercept form. So we're going to graph it. Okay, folks, your starting cost is $100. That's what you have to pay up front. So that is your y-intercept. So this line is counting by hundreds: 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. And then every hour, it's counting by ones: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so folks, we already figured out that you have to pay $100 up front for them to set it up. So your line is going to start right there at $100. Look, that's before you've even had the tent up for an hour. You have to pay $100 up front. Now, from that point, remember, you're going to rise and run the slope. Sorry. Okay, your slope is not a fraction. So remember, if your slope is a whole number, then just make it a fraction by putting a 1 underneath it. Okay, so now it's a fraction. Now you're going to rise 500 and run 1. Okay, so look, that makes sense. So you start at $100 fee. You've paid $100 up front. Every hour you go over, you have to pay $500 more. So we're going to rise 500 from this point. 1, 2, 3, 4,